Thank you, sir. I appreciate it very much. Here's a point I want to make right at the start. You put out some great numbers on some of the recent releases. You know, first and foremost, this is a middle class boom. I can't emphasize that enough. This is a middle class boom, even though perhaps some people won't give us credit for it. We've been rebuilding the economy, re-incentivizing the economy, lower taxes, lower regulations, opening up the energy sector, tough trade reforms for level playing fields. So after 2.5 years, average real family income, $65,000. In fact, it's really closer to $66,000. It's a $6,000 gain, it's about 8%. It's better than anything our predecessors have done, be they Democrat or Republican. I'm not being partisan here.
Maybe ever, Larry, right? Maybe ever.
I have to go back.
Go check it. I don't think it's ever been done.
But it's a long ways. You're right. 65,000, almost 66,000. That is the middle of the middle. So I think that's very important. And the increase of roughly 8% has never been done before. And actually, if you look at the composition of wage increases, sir, the biggest gains have come in the middle quintile, the fourth and the fifth. The lowest 10% have had the biggest increases. Not the highest wages, mind you, but the biggest gains, which is what really matters to individual people. So I think that's absolutely a key point. The policies have spurred a middle class boom. Now, 3.5% unemployment, lowest in 51 years, 1.4% inflation. We've had a 50% increase on balance for the stock market. Household net worth up $12 trillion. So we're about $103 trillion for American household net worth. Disposable income is now growing at 3%. The reason these key points, inflation, stocks, income, wages, there's a model, there's a couple of these models, they're very interesting. I'm going to talk about the Moody's model. It's been run by a friend of mine, it's an old friend of mine, Mark Zandi. Does not have much sympathetic views towards our administration, or me for that matter, but nonetheless, he's a good guy personally. I don't take this stuff personally. But their model is now showing, because of stocks, inflation, what he calls the pocketbook model, which is the average family income you talked about before, $66,000. His electoral range is 289 to 351. 289 to 351, I believe you need 270 to win. And the most important one is the pocketbook. The pocketbook model gives you 351,000. My former boss, Ronald Reagan, used to call it take-home pay. We're seeing it once again. We're seeing it once again. Is this stuff going to happen? Well, their view is, and Oxford Economics said the same thing, if we continue along this path.
Are they predicting who's going to win the election, Larry? Is that what you're saying?
Those are the kinds of numbers that suggest a very substantial victory. A very substantial victory. Let me go on again. I'll be brief on the wrap up here. America is working, as you said, 6 million jobs, 500,000 some odd manufacturing job increases since you took office. Let me make this point. I've been working hard on this, trying to convince my former colleagues in the media. September payrolls, we're still working. September payrolls, including the revisions, up 181,000, okay? 7.1 million job openings, 7.1 million job openings, 5.8 million unemployed. We have more job openings than we have.
Careful, there's a big camera right there. Move over there, plenty of room, yeah, if you want. Hi, Steve. Okay, thank you very much. We have a cabinet meeting. We'll have a few questions after Grace, and if you would, Ben, please do the honors.
Our kind Father in heaven, we're so thankful for the many blessings that you have bestowed upon us in this country. And we're thankful for the people of courage who have been here before us, who have fought hard for the rights of our country. And we thank you for President Donald Trump, who also exhibits great courage in face of constant criticism. We ask that you would give him strength to endure and the wisdom to lead and to recognize you as the sovereign of the universe with the solution to everything. And the people around the president, the vice president, the cabinet, the advisors, give us all an understanding heart and a compassionate heart. Those are the things that will keep America great. And help us all to recognize as a nation that separation of church and state means that the church does not dominate the state, and it means the state does not dominate the church. It doesn't mean that they cannot work together to promote godly principles of loving your fellow man, of caring about your neighbor, of developing your God-given talents to the utmost so that you become valuable to the people around you, of having values and principles that govern your life. And if we do those things, then we will always be successful. And we thank you for hearing our prayer in your holy name. Amen.
Thank you, Ben. That was a great job. Appreciate it. The economy is doing fantastically well. It's getting very close to another record. We've had many records since we won office. We're getting very close to another record. I don't know if anybody saw the household median income for 8 years of President Bush. It rose $400. For 8 years of President Obama, it rose $975. And for 2.5 years of President Trump, they have it down as 2.5 years, it rose $5,000, not including $2,000 for taxes, so it rose, let's say, $7,000. So in 2.5 years, we're up $7,000 compared to $1,000 compared to $400. And that's for 8 years and 8 years. That's a number that just came out, but that's a number that I don't know how there could be any dispute or any, I've never heard of a number like that. Meaning the economy is doing fantastically well. We need for our farmers, our manufacturers, for frankly unions and non-unions, we need USMCA to be voted on. If it's voted on, it'll pass. It's up to Nancy Pelosi to put it up. If she puts it up, it's going to pass. It's going to be very bipartisan. It's something that's very much needed. It'll be hundreds of thousands of jobs. Mexico and Canada have approved it. It's done. They're waiting for our approval. And we can't seem to get votes. I call them the do-nothing Democrats. I mean that. They've done nothing. But this is something they can do very easily. We'll give them bipartisan approvals and credits, all the credits they want, but they have to be able to do it. So the economy is doing fantastically well. We want to vote on USMCA. We have other trade deals that we've done. We've done South Korea, which is a fantastic deal for us. Turned out even better than we thought. South Korea was a terrible deal. The person in charge of that particular deal, Hillary Clinton, if you've heard of her, she's the one that's accusing everybody of being a Russian agent. Anybody that is opposed to her is a Russian agent. So that's a scam that was pretty much put down. Tulsi, I don't know Tulsi, but she's not a Russian agent. I don't know Jill Stein. I know she likes environment. I don't think she likes Russians. If she does like them, I know she's not an asset. She called her an asset of Russia. These people are sick. There's something wrong with them. But I think that Tulsi Gabbard probably got helped quite a bit by this stir. I think we were helped because it shows for 2.5 years we end up winning. I had to go through 2.5 years. If she would have done this earlier, people would have realized what a scam it is. Everybody's a Russian or a Russian agent or a Russian asset. The economy, again, is at a level that it's never been. We are doing, whether it's household income, whether it's almost any chart, and I think maybe the best of all is unemployment. Unemployment has reached historic lows. African American, Asian American, Hispanic American reach numbers that nobody ever thought would be possible, have the lowest ever in history. So if you're black, if you're Hispanic, if you're Asian, anybody, African American, Hispanic American, Asian, the lowest in history. For women, the lowest in 71 years, the best. When I say lowest, I'm talking about the best. Both the best unemployment numbers and the best employment numbers. Either way you want to cut it. You can say them both because it's best in both. As far as employment is concerned, we have the most people working today than ever before in the history of our country. We've never had this close to 160 million people. So it's some incredible things are happening. Syria, we will be giving a much fuller report. Mike Pompeo, Secretary of Defense, Esper, and the different people that are very much involved. Mike Pence, Vice President, we're having very good news coming out. The ceasefire is holding. The Kurds are moving out to safer areas beyond the safe zone, as we call it. Having a safe zone is not a bad thing, it's a good thing. And plenty of Turks have been killed because of conflict on their border. So, you know, you have to look at it both ways. But the ceasefire is absolutely holding. There's some skirmishes, but very little, relatively speaking. Of course, if you watch the fake news, it's like pretty wild. It's really holding. I've watched these pundits that have been working on this thing for 20 years. They've been working on the Middle East for 20 years. They don't know what they're doing, and they're telling me what to do. They're saying, what did Trump get out of it? What did he get out of it? I'll tell you what I get out of it. We won't be fighting, and we'll bring our soldiers back home. They were supposed to be there for 30 days, and they've been there now for 10 years in Syria. 10 years. They were supposed to go in, do a quick hit on ISIS, and come out. Now, as far as ISIS is concerned, when I took over, November 2016, ISIS was all over the place. I'm the one, meaning it was me and this administration, working with others, including the Kurds, that captured all of these people that you're talking about right now. Because President Obama, it was a mess. And I was told, and you were told, and everybody told, it would be years before you ever did what I did in about a month and a half after I started. I went over to Iraq, I met with our generals, and we figured out a plan, and it was done within a month and a half. So I'm the one that did the capturing. I'm the one that knows more about it than you people or the fake pundits. But I sort of have to smile to myself. I was telling a couple of people, I'm watching these people that I've been watching for 20 years. I've been watching the same faces. They're just a little bit older and a little bit grayer. I've been watching them for 20 years saying about the Middle East, and they've been wrong on everything they've ever said. And now all of a sudden people are starting to say, you know, what Trump is doing is great. And we have a tremendous power, because since the election of 2016, November, since that beautiful day, our country's picked up in value trillions and trillions of dollars of worth. Trillions and trillions of dollars. Numbers that nobody would believe. Numbers, if I would have said it on the campaign trail, I would have been excoriated by the fake media. Excoriated. The numbers are far greater than anything that even I predicted. You hear that with the household median income. $400 for 8 years. $975 for 8 years. $7,000 for 2.5 years. Up. Nobody's ever seen numbers. Larry Kudlow is going to speak in a minute, and he's going to tell you that's one of the greatest strengths of our country. And by the way, other areas and countries are doing poorly. Europe is doing very poorly. Asia is doing very poorly. China is doing very poorly. Worst year they've had in 57 years. I wonder why. I wonder why. I'm sure you can't figure it out. And we're doing great. We're taking in billions and billions of dollars in tariffs from China. And they're eating the tariffs because they devalued their currency. And they're pouring money into the economy because they don't want to lose the jobs, but they are losing the jobs. They're having a terrible year, worse than 57 years, they say. And if they say that, it means it's worse. And they announced that they have the worst numbers they've had in 20 years. They announced 6. I don't think it's 6. I think it's probably minus something. Could very well be minus. Could very well be in negative territory. But we're doing great. And by the way, the deal with China is coming along very well. They want to make a deal because they sort of have to make a deal, I think. They have to make a deal because their supply chain is going down the tubes. Their supply chain is broken, like you've never seen anything broken before. It's broken. So our soldiers are in Syria. They're moving out very nicely. ISIS is being held by the Kurds. And I have an absolute commitment from Turkey that they're watching them just in case. So we have a double. We have the Kurds are watching them. As you know, most of the ISIS fighters that we captured, we, not Obama, we captured them. Our country captured them, working with others, including the Kurds. And we helped them. Don't forget, we helped the Kurds. Everyone said the Kurds helped us. That's true. We helped the Kurds. They're no angels, but we helped the Kurds. And we never gave the Kurds a commitment that we'd stay for the next 400 years and protect them. They've been fighting with the Turks for 300 years that people know of. And nobody ever committed, gee, if you do this, we're going to do that, we're going to stay with you forever. Nobody ever said that. But when I watch these pundits that always are trying to take a shot, they say, what are we getting out of it? You know what we're getting out of it? We're bringing our soldiers back home. That's a big thing. And it's going to probably work. But if it doesn't work, you're going to have people fighting like they've been fighting for 300 years. It's very simple. It's really very simple. But we're going to bring our soldiers back home. So far, there hasn't been one drop of blood shed during this whole period by an American soldier. Nobody was killed. Nobody cut their finger. There's been nothing. And they're leaving. Rather, I think, not expeditiously, rather intelligently, just leaving certain areas, leaving. We've secured the oil. If you remember, I didn't want to go into Iraq. I was a civilian, so I had no power over it, but I always was speaking against going into Iraq. It was not a great decision. But I always said, if you're going in, keep the oil. Same thing here, keep the oil. We want to keep the oil. And we'll work something out with the Kurds so that they have some money, they have some cash flow. Maybe we'll get one of our big oil companies to go in and do it properly. But they'll have some cash flow, which they basically don't have right now. Everybody's fighting. It's not a big oil area, but everybody's fighting for whatever there is. So we have a lot of good things going over there, and they're going very well. As far as the continuation of the witch hunt, we beat the Russian deal, we beat the Mueller deal. Now I find out, as I said before, that they're trying to make other people into Russian agents, Russian assets. It has no credibility. Now they have what should be extremely easy to beat because they have a perfect phone call. I made a perfect call, not a good call, perfect call. In fact, a friend of mine who's a great lawyer said, did you know this would be the subject of all of this scrutiny? Because the way you express yourself, this is like a perfect call. You must have known this was going to happen. No, I didn't. That's just the way I talked to the president of Ukraine, who, by the way, said there was no pressure. There was no blackmail. There was no anything. And Congressman Hurd, I have to tell you, yesterday was great. It was great what he said. I gained a lot of respect for him very quickly because he said, you know, with all of this going on, I haven't heard one Ukrainian say there was pressure. I haven't heard one Ukrainian, not one, say that there was pressure of any kind. There haven't even been reports of it to our people. Nobody's even said it. And the reason you haven't heard it because there is no pressure. The conversation I had was perfect. And what happened is I released the conversation, and that threw Shifty Schiff off. Crooked, he's a corrupt politician. Schiff is a corrupt politician. That threw him off because he made up a lie. He made up what I said in my conversation. And he went before the United States Congress, and he said a made-up story. It was fabricated. He totally fabricated. They say he's a screenwriter. Well, this was screenwritten. It was a fabricated story. So he made up a lie, And I released, they never thought that I'd do this. I released a transcription done by stenographers of the exact conversation I had. And now the game was up. And the other thing is, the whistleblower and the other whistleblower and the informer, all these people that seem to have disappeared. You know why they disappeared? Because they talked about another conversation. A conversation that I never had. They made up a conversation. Now, if you look at the whistleblower report and you look at the actual transcribed conversation, the actual conversation that I had, and you couple that with the president saying that that was a perfectly fine conversation. I don't even know. He doesn't even know what they're doing. He didn't even know about the money not being paid. Okay, I think that came out somewhere, that the money, he didn't know that. Then you also have his foreign minister saying, no, it was a very good conversation. There was no anything asked for. There was no pressure whatsoever. So there's a phony investigation. I watched a couple of people on television today talking about it. They were talking about what a phony deal it is, what a phony investigation it is. And the Republicans have to get tougher and fight. We have some that are great fighters, but they have to get tougher and fight because the Democrats are trying to hurt the Republican Party for the election, which is coming up, where we're doing very well. We're had a record crowd. The history of the arena, it's the biggest crowd they've ever had, and we had 20,000 people outside at least. We're doing great in the election. You saw what happened in North Carolina. We picked up 2 seats that people didn't think we were going to pick up. That was 2 weeks ago. Last week, a governor that people thought was okay went down, and now he's got a big election. He was under 50%. Nobody thought that was going to happen. We're doing very well. But a lot of the stories that are made up between a guy like Shifty Schiff, who's a phony guy, corrupt politician, the media buys it. Because unfortunately, the media is corrupt also. Much of the media, so much of it, such a big percentage of it. It's such a shame. Some great reporters, some great journalists, but some really bad people. So that's the story. The economy's good. We're doing well with getting out finally after 10 years. Again, 30 days to 10 years. And we're getting out. None of our people are injured. It's very smooth thus far. And I think that you're going to see something that's going to be good. Remember this, if Turkey misbehaves, I don't think they will. But we have a power that nobody thought we had to the extent. It's called sanctions. It's called tariffs. We'll tariff the hell of their product coming here. They send tremendous amounts of steel to the United States and other things. We will tariff them and we will sanction them. But I don't want to use that as a threat because Mike Pence and our Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, they went out and they negotiated a very good 5-day ceasefire. I'm sure if we needed a little extension, that would be happening. But our power is our power of economics. It's a great power. We've rebuilt the military since November of 2016. Our military was totally depleted from being in stupid situations like this for so many years. Our military was depleted to a level that we had very little ammunition. I was actually told we had no ammunition. Now we have more ammunition than we've ever had. Our military is as strong or stronger than it's ever been, probably stronger than ever. And in a few short months, as the equipment pours in from the money we spent, $2.5 trillion, it will be at a level that it's never even come close to. It's a big difference. All made in the USA. All made in the USA. So we're doing very well, and if anybody has any questions, please feel free.
Will you maintain a limited number of troops in Syria?
Excuse me?
Will you maintain a limited number of troops in Syria?
Well, we don't think it's going to be necessary. I don't want to leave troops there. It's very dangerous we had 28 troops as it turned out. People said 50, it was 28. And you had an army on both sides of those troops. Those troops would have been wiped out. I don't think it's necessary, other than that we secured the oil. It's in a little different section, but we just secured the oil. And the other region where we've been asked by Israel and Jordan to leave a small number of troops is a totally different section of Syria near Jordan and close to Israel. And that's a totally different section. That's a totally different mindset. So we have a small group there, and we've secured the oil. Other than that, there's no reason for it, in our opinion. And Again, the Kurds are going to be watching. We're working with the Kurds. We have a good relationship with the Kurds. But we never agreed to, protect the Kurds. We fought with them for 3.5 to 4 years. We never agreed to protect the Kurds for the rest of their lives. Remember this. When Iraq was fighting the Kurds, everybody thought we were going to fight with the Kurds. I said, well, it's a little strange that we're fighting with the Kurds when we just spent $4 trillion on Iraq, and now we're going to be fighting Iraq. So what I did is I said, we're not going to take a position. Let them fight themselves. I thought the Kurds would do very well. Everyone said, oh, the Kurds will do very well. Well, Iraq moved in and the Kurds left. They didn't fight because they didn't have us to fight with. A lot of people are good when they fight with us. When you have $10 billion worth of airplanes shooting 10 miles in front of your line, it's much easier to fight. But with that, they were a good help, but we were a great help to them too. They were fighting ISIS. They hated ISIS. So they were fighting ISIS. But we never agreed. Where is an agreement that said we have to stay in the Middle East for the rest of humanity, for the rest of civilization to protect the Kurds? It never said that. And we have protected them. We've taken very good care of them. And I hope they're going to watch over ISIS, because that's, again, most of it's not in the safe zone, as we call it. Some places called demilitarized zone. In the old days, we'd call areas like this a demilitarized zone. And our relationship with the Kurds is good, and they're going to be safe. And I will say this, if shooting didn't start for a couple of days, I don't think the Kurds would have moved. I don't think, frankly, you would have been able to make a very easy deal with Turkey. I think when it started for a few days, it was so nasty that when we went to Turkey and when we went to the Kurds, they agreed to do things that they never would have done before the shooting started. If they didn't go through 2.5 days of hell, I don't think they would have done it. I think you couldn't have made a deal. And people have been trying to make this deal for years. But we're close to making it. We'll see what happens. Again, they've been fighting for 300 years that we know of. 300 years. So why should we put our soldiers in the midst of two large groups, hundreds of thousands potentially of people that are fighting? I don't think so. I don't think so. Yes, Steve?
You said the Republicans need to get tougher and fight. What are you talking about?
Well, I think the Democrats fight dirty. I think the Democrats are lousy politicians with lousy policy. They want open borders. They don't care about crime. They want sanctuary cities. They don't care about drugs. They don't care about almost anything. They don't care about USMCA. How about that? I think they're lousy politicians. But two things they have. They're vicious, and they stick together. They don't have Mitt Romney in their midst. They don't have people like that. They stick together. You never see them break off. You never see somebody go out. And that's why I respected so much what I watched with Will Hurd today, because he was one of the few that didn't seem to be there, and yet he made a statement. He said, well, I haven't seen any complaints whatsoever from the Ukrainians. I mean, the Ukrainians didn't complain, and they didn't tell any of our ambassadors. This thing is all about a letter that was perfect. You never hear the letter anymore. It was all about whistleblowers. You never hear, what happened to the whistleblower? They're gone because they've been discredited. What happened to the informant? And where is the IG? Why didn't the IG read the letter, read the transcript? He could have gotten it, I guess, I assume. I would have declassified it for him if I had to do that. Why didn't he read this and then see that the whistleblower's account was totally different than the letter? Then he would have said, oh, there's no problem here. The whistleblower gave a false account. Now you have to say, well, do we have to protect somebody that gave a false account? You know, these whistleblowers, they have them like they're angels, okay? So do we have to protect somebody that gave a totally false account of my conversation? I don't know. You tell me. Do we have to protect the informant? Now, I happen to think there probably wasn't an informant. You know, the informant went to the whistleblower. The whistleblower had second and third hand information. You remember that. That was a big problem. But the information was wrong. So was there actually an informant? Maybe the informant was Schiff. It could be Shifty Schiff. In my opinion, it's possibly Schiff. Why didn't Schiff say that he and his staff or a whole group, why didn't he say that he met with the whistleblower? He knew all about the whistleblower. Why didn't he say? He's a crooked politician. Very bad for our country. This whole thing is very bad for our country. In the midst of that, I'm trying to get out of wars. And we may have to get in wars, too. Okay? We may have to get in wars. We're better prepared than we've ever been. If Iran does something, they'll be hit like they've never been hit before. I mean, we have things that we're looking at. But can you imagine? I have to fight off these lowlives. At the same time, I'm negotiating these very important things that should have been done during Obama and Bush and even before that. All right? So that's where we are right now. Actually, very few. Go ahead, please.
Mr. President, will the troops from Syria come home, or will you send them to other military?
Well, they're going to be sent initially to different parts, get prepared, then ultimately we're bringing them home, yeah. We're bringing our troops back home. I got elected on bringing our soldiers back home. Now, it's not very popular within the Beltway, because, you know, Lockheed doesn't like it, and these great military companies don't like it. It's not very popular. And outside the Beltway, my largest cheer in Dallas, I had 25,000 people close in that arena, a record crowd. I had so many people outside of the arena, thousands. My largest cheer that night was two things. We're building the wall. That's number one. And number two, and probably tied for number one, was we're bringing our soldiers back home. That was our largest cheer in Dallas. Great place. Great state, Texas. Tough state. They're tough. When I said we're bringing our soldiers back home, the place went crazy. But within the Beltway, you know, people don't like it. It's much tougher for me. It'd be much easier for me to let our soldiers be there, let them continue to die. I go out to Dover and I meet parents. It's not a pleasant thing. It's the most unpleasant thing I do. Most unpleasant thing I do. When I see that big cargo plane open and I see those coffins get rolled off, or when I go over to Walter Reed Hospital, where the doctors are incredible, by the way, saving people that could have never been saved even 5 years ago. You know that. But those people are horribly wounded, horribly, horribly wounded. Wounded warriors. It's the toughest thing I do. Toughest thing is sending letters. I send many letters home to parents, and I speak to parents, but I send many letters home to parents. Their son or daughter has been killed over in the Middle East. For what? For what? There are times to fight, and there are times not to fight. There are times to be smart. We have tremendous economic power, and we're using our economic power. Much more powerful in certain ways than playing with guns. And much better for our country, and much better for everybody, and actually much better for humanity, okay? Thank you all very much. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you very much. Doral was a very simple situation. I own a property in Florida. I was going to do it at no cost or give it free if I got a ruling, because there's a question as to whether or not you're allowed to give it, because it's like a contribution to a country. I'd have to get a ruling. But I would have given it for nothing. It's a lot of money I would have given away. Like I give away my salary. I give away my salary. It's, I guess, close to $450,000. I give it away. Nobody ever said he gives away his salary. Now it comes up because of this. But I give away my presidential salary. They say that no other president has done it. I'm surprised, to be honest with you. They actually say that George Washington may have been the only other president to do. But see whether or not Obama gave up his salary.